Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and this is the live stream where we do it once a week. I take your questions, and we try and get you hired. Anything related to job interviews, resumes, where to discover jobs, how to apply for jobs, careers in general, networking, how to talk to people, all that kind of stuff. The title of today's episode is, What is your current salary? And how do you handle stress? I'm going to give the best answers to both those questions to start us off. And this is episode 107, so away we go. As always, I want to give a shout out to my Patreons, my YouTube channel members, my super thanks donors, and to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. You are awesome. If you're seeing my face, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. You can get in the chat, ask me questions. Whatever you're wondering about, whatever you're struggling with, and I will do my best to try and help you out. And there you go. Okay. And you're going to have to be a little bit patient with me because I am under the weather. I got a wicked cough. Sends you into coughing fits. They last for an eternity. That kind of thing. I'm sure you've been there. So I'm medicated up and we'll see how this goes. Okay, we're going to first briefly talk about the best answer to the job interview question. How do you handle stress? Okay, you ever get that pointy question? How do you handle stress? And I want to point out before we even begin that this is a different question to when they say, tell me about a time you handled stress. Okay, a lot of people, well, some people anyway, don't seem to get that. I always get ask these questions and they say, well, yeah, what if they say, this? Yes, I know that's a different question. That's a behavioral question. We're talking about if they say, how do you handle stress? That's where they're not necessarily looking for a story. They're just saying, you have to explain, right? So sometimes you see this pointed question. This question, you get it a little bit more in management type interviews. So if you're going to be a supervisor or mid-level manager, something like that, they'll probably ask you this type of question. Oh, man. Yep, here we go. So what do we do here? Listen, this question is yet another trap. A lot of questions they ask in job interviews are essentially traps. They're seeing if you're going to give them rope to hang you, or you're going to give, what's the expression? Enough rope to hang yourself. They're going to give you the rope to hang yourself. Right? That's exactly what these questions are. They're not questions where you talk about your positives. They're questions where you talk about your negatives because they're asking you about a negative thing, namely you being stressed. Now, the problem is if you really give them what they want and you get into the details, you're going to be talking all about how you've been stressed in the past, how you tend to get stressed, all the things you've had to do to cope with stress, which gives the impression that you're stressed a lot. And the more you talk in a question like this, it's bad because the more you say these things, the more they get a first impression of a person who is stressed regularly. And it's a big deal, okay? And it isn't, or probably isn't, because the only reason you're talking about it is because they brought it up, right? So you want to get off this question quickly. And there's one pretty simple way to do this that usually works, is when they ask you, tell me about a time, or not tell me about a time, but how do you handle stress thing? I forgot the question there. How do you handle stress? You say, I actually handle it very well. And then you shut the hell up because you're not going to keep running your mouth. And what you get is you get a very small gap in the conversation because you're not talking. They say, how do you handle stress? You say, actually, I handle stress very well. Just like that. And 90% of the time, the interviewer, usually it's a recruiter, will just simply move on to the next question. They'll just say, okay, and away you go. But that's the strategy you take for this question, because the more you talk, the more details you give, the more there's a really good chance you're going to be giving out some red flags. Okay? To understand really why that's the case, we have to get into how the the job interview is where they get a first impression of you. They have no idea who you are. They have your resume, but they have no idea who you are as a person. You're a blank slate. And if you walk in the room and say, I'm an executive manager, or I'm a student, or whatever, that will frame who you are to them, because they're just getting a first impression of you, right? And it could go both ways. They could think that you're awesome, or they could think that you're completely unsuitable. And so that's why these questions are important to get right. Okay, so that's how, this is a very short one today. That's how you answer that question. And if you feel you must say something else, like they push you, they say like, well, could you give me some more details or something like that? You employ the same strategy where you give a very curt, safe answer where you say the right thing, and then you shut the hell up. So for example, they start off by saying, how do you handle stress? And you say, oh, I handle it very well. And then you get that silence. And then they go, okay, that's good. Can you give us a bit more details? And then you would say something like, well, stress occurs from time to time. It's a normal part of any job. But I've never had a problem with it in the past. And then you wait for the next question, right? I know it seems weird, but that's the best way to answer that question. When you're in a job interview, you don't have a lot of time to speak freely, and you want to spend that time talking about relevant things. An example of what not an irrelevant thing would be, what you don't want to end up talking about, is how you're bad at stuff. For example, how you get stressed. You don't want to go into detail here. What are your weaknesses? All the things that you might have an issue with. You don't want to go into detail with that stuff. All the things from your past that you did at other jobs that have nothing to do with this job, you don't want to talk about that stuff at length. What you do want to talk about is how awesome you are, how you have all kinds of skills, all kinds of education, all kinds of experience, and how you can bring them all to do an awesome job for these people in this role. That's what you want to talk about. So you don't want to spend time on questions like this, talking about how you've gotten stressed in the past and how you've had to mitigate it with all kinds of techniques, right? So that's the strategy behind questions like this. So just remember, they ask you about stress, you say, I handle it very well. If you feel you need to say anything else, you could say, well, stress is something that happens from time to time to everyone in every role, and I've never really had a problem with it in the past. And then you shut up and you get on to the next question, where they ask you about your strengths or why you want to work here. And that's where you want to go into a lot of detail, giving them all kinds of reasons to hire you. That's how that works. There really isn't much more to it. Now, as I said at the beginning, if they ask you a behavioral question, okay, which is a completely different thing, where they say, tell me about a time that you were stressed or you had to handle stress, that's a different thing, okay? The way you answer that is the way you answer any other behavioral question, where you come with, I recommend 10 stories from your past that have been rehearsed and vetted, and they're all up here in your head. You've practiced saying them in the STAR format or some other very convenient, compact format. You vetted these stories, they're safe, they're good to tell them, and you pull out whichever story of yours that most closely fits the question that they happen to be asking you. So if they tell you, if you've memorized 4 stories of big accomplishments of yours, for example, then they ask you a question, tell me about a time you were stressed, you could maybe pull out one of those. You tell an accomplishment story because there was a little bit of stress involved. It wasn't easy, but you kicked ass, and this was the result, right? So that's a whole other thing. How to answer behavioral questions is a whole other thing. So I just want to make that differentiation. Okay, that's what I have to say about that. Let's go over to questions. Hopefully people get in the chat and ask me some intelligent questions here. We got Carlos. Carlos Mann says, I have an interview set up for tomorrow morning. Okay. Well, best of luck, Carlos. If you have a question, I'd be happy to answer it. Seeing as though people haven't really gotten in the chat yet, let's move on to The second question that we're going to answer today, which is, what is your current salary? This is another one of those pointed questions everybody loves getting, where they sit you down in an interview, they shake your hands, and they try and pretend to make you feel comfortable, and then they say, what is your current salary? Right? Everyone loves that. Now, let's start by, I just want to explain the simple fact that the answer to this question is none of their damn business, okay? What you did with some other third party is none of their business. They don't have the right to that information, just so everybody's on the same page, okay? This is the thing. When you go to a job interview, what does it feel like? Well, for most people, especially when you're young or when you haven't done many of these, it feels like you're about this tall and they're giants. And you're going onto their turf and you're outside your comfort zone and you're like just begging for this job, you hoping that they'll be good enough to grant it to little old you, right? And so it feels like you're beholden to them, that they could ask you almost anything and you'd feel a lot of pressure to answer, because part of your brain is saying, like, what are you doing? Give them the answer. That's what you do in an interview. You answer their questions. Hello. Yeah, that's what it feels like. And they take full advantage of it. They take full advantage of it often by asking you things to which they are not entitled an answer. For example, if they said, like, what's your credit card number? Right? You'd feel pressure to answer them. You'd feel like you're letting them down by not just handing over all your credit card information, right? This question is like that, okay? They don't have the right to this. No matter what they say, they don't have the right to this. This is personal and confidential information. Now, listen, if you choose to, you're perfectly okay disclosing it if you wish, but you are not obligated to. Don't be bullied into giving out this information if you don't want them to know, and it would be bad for you. And it could be bad for you if you're trying to negotiate salary later on, right? So before we get into how to answer this question, I want to make sure that that's clear to everyone, okay? They are not entitled to an answer. It's perfectly okay for you to say, sorry, I don't give that out. And in fact, that's kind of the answer I recommend. I just recommend you don't give them this. I'll just say it. So the answer I'd recommend is to say, I'm sorry, I don't disclose that information. It's a personal policy I have because there are issues with privacy and confidentiality. I'm sure you understand. Okay, that's how you answer that question. What is your current salary? And that's what you say. I'm sorry, I have a personal policy of not disclosing that because there are issues with privacy and confidentiality. I'm sure you understand. Now, a lot of people will say, but Bill, what if they really put the screws to me and, oh no, they bring out the heavy weapons, they ask it again? I'm powerless before that kind of strategic negotiation savvy. I will cave if they were to ask me that question again. It's very simple. Any other follow-up question they have, or if they repeat the question, or they really give you a hard time over it, it's very simple. Here's what you say. You say your answer again with a big smile on your face. You say, oh, like I mentioned, I can't give you that information. There's confidentiality issues and privacy issues. It's personal information. I'm sure you understand. You can give whatever variant you want of that answer and phrase it however you want, but that's what you keep saying if they keep putting the screws to you, and you don't waver, and there's no reason to make it awkward. You got a big smile on your face. It's like, hey, I'm cooperating with you, I'm answering, but this is my position, and it's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. There's confidentiality issues here. Like somebody asking you to break an NDA or something. Okay, so don't let these people bully you, right? They take full advantage of social pressure, the awkwardness in the job interview. That's not an accident. They usually contrive that to make you feel pressured to tell them everything that they want to know, right? And that's good for them, bad for you. So don't cave to that, okay? And it's good to just have that in your back pocket. You don't get upset, you don't make it feel awkward, you just have a big smile, you look approachable, you look like you're having a great time, and then this is what you say: I'm sorry, I'd like to, but I can't because I have a policy of not disclosing. There's confidentiality information, there's issues of potential identity theft, and for that reason, just as a matter of policy, I don't disclose that. I'm sure you'd understand. You guys have your own information that you handle exactly the same. I know you understand what I'm talking about, right? Just like that. Okay, so that's what I want to say. Now, why are they asking this question? We didn't cover that. Why are they even asking this? It's very simple. You see, by looking at your resume and by talking to you, they don't know how much you're worth. Okay? The reasons for this are many and varied. I used to teach a course in university called Total Compensation, where we talk all about that. And I've also gotten quite into the study of executive compensation, which is insanely complex. You need like a degree in finance to understand it. There are many reasons why they can't put a price tag on you just by looking at you or just by looking at your resume. Okay, there's so many variables that they don't know how much to pay you. Okay, they know what their job offers. Like they might have a range, right? There might be an official range and then there might be an unofficial range, but they don't know what number in that range would be appropriate to offer you, that you would take it and feel happy to get it, right? They don't know this. So what's the easiest way to place a number on somebody? You ask them how much they've been making. If they've been working in a role for the last 2 years, and let's say they've been making $50,000 a year, as an example, well, you can assume that they're probably worth $50,000 or thereabouts. So if you were to offer them $53,000 or $55,000, you can conclude safely that they'd probably accept that, right? That's why they ask you the question. You don't want them to know how much you're making now because they'll attach your value to what you're making now, right? Whether or not that's accurate. Maybe you're underemployed now. Maybe you're working at a fraction of your potential. And they will still tie your current value to what you made in your last job. And it's also unrealistic because maybe you're getting other things out of your last job other than money. Maybe you live right next door to your workplace. Your commute is like 1 minute, Maybe you take an underpaying job because of the convenience. Maybe you know several people there. Maybe they've given you glowing letters of recommendation and references. Maybe there's all kinds of work you do that will make you looked upon favorably in your profession there. There's or just the reputation of the employer or something will open doors for you. Like there's all kinds of other intangible things. Maybe they have tremendous benefits. All kinds of stuff they don't technically give you cash, but it's still really valuable. There's a million reasons why that number could be inaccurate in terms of representing your value. These people don't care. They're going to treat you like a number, and that's why they're asking this question. So we don't want to give them this information. We want them to not know how valuable you are. We want their mind to be open to you getting a salary at the top of the range, right? And there you go. So that's what I have to say about this question. That's why you answer it the way you do. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's get into the chat. I see there's some people in the chat. Thank you for participating. I see there's 30 people here. Okay, Moon Knight Plays says I have a walk-in interview for tomorrow. Okay, well, best of luck, Moon Knight. Carlos says, how can I ask for a higher pay than what's being offered? Here's what you do. You say, I would like more pay. Okay. You can ask for whatever the hell you want. You don't need anyone's permission. You can phrase it any way you want. Now, if you're asking me, how can I do this in such a way that it maximizes the chance that they will simply accept it? Okay, if that's what you're asking. You do it, in my opinion and in my experience, in a very specific way, okay? Here's what you do. You, first of all, try and get to the end of the job interview process without having any kind of serious discussion about money. So when they ask you about salary expectations or anything like that, the answer is always, well, it's too soon to tell. I'd have to know more about the job, or, like some kind of deflection, right? And the thing that I've said for years, the way to answer that, if they really put the screws to you, is to give them a range where you have a low number and a high number. You say somewhere between this and that, somewhere in there, that seems reasonable, right? Now, the low number and the high number, the low number is pretty low and the high number is pretty high. They're not ridiculous, but they're like a stretch, okay? So what you're saying is like somewhere between this really low number and this really high number, somewhere in there, like, that would be fine, right? And that's as precise as you are going to go. And what you do is you want to get to the offer stage before you've mentioned any kind of number. You don't want to mention any number of what your value is, right? That's what they're trying to get with this question. What is your current salary? They're trying to place a value on you. What you want to do is, you see, you can't compete on price when you're interviewing. Because if they're talking to other candidates and you seem too expensive, they're going to go with the cheaper candidate, if there's any issue whatsoever, right? So you have like really no bargaining power. The only time you have bargaining power is if you get past the interview stage to the offer stage, where they've decided, okay, we want you. We love you. We think that you're awesome. We see how all kinds of, how awesome you are, all these soft skills, all this experience. Your personality's great. Your attitude's great. That's really what makes us want you. That's why we're picking you, right? So then they make you an offer. The recruiter says, I approve. And the hiring manager says, yes, I want them. And I'm getting my hopes up as we speak that will be the person I'm going to be working with, right? And then they write you up an offer, which takes a bit of time, and they send it to you. And then they wait for you to accept it. And if at that point you say, well, this is good, but I need this, sorry. There's going to be now pressure on them to agree. Because if you were to back out now it's painful. The recruiter is going to be embarrassed. They recommended you, they made you an offer, and you refused. It's very embarrassing. It shows, it gives the impression that they really don't know what they're doing, right? They look bad in front of the hiring manager. The hiring manager has their heart set on you. They've chosen you. They're looking forward to you starting. And they're also glad that this process is pretty much almost over. It's just some paperwork now, right? Wrong. If you walk away at this point, now they've got to go, oh, okay, well, we can't get that person. First of all, that's disappointing. And I don't like that as a hiring manager. I had my heart set on that person. What's the problem? Why couldn't we get them? Now I have to go back and talk to maybe the runner-up or find some alternative. And worst case scenario, you might have to post the job all over again and start the whole thing again. They do not want to do that. This is a very expensive process for them and very time-consuming, and they just want to get it done. So if you, at the offer stage, you bring up the salary thing and you say, like, I need you to bump this number up to here, and then we got a deal. And then you give them something. Everything else is fine. Vacation's fine. Start date's fine. Everything. You know what? You change that number. I'll start whenever you want. Let me know. Right? And then we got a deal. But that's your condition. And if it's one condition and you're being awesome on everything else, and, they will feel a lot of pressure to say yes. Now, it doesn't mean that they will, because sometimes there are just hard stops. There's just the top of the unofficial range. They just can't go any higher. There could be a situation like that. But in most situations, or a lot of situations, I don't know what jobs we're talking about. If we're talking about working at Tim Hortons and, maybe they can't go anywhere. There's no flexibility. But, or McDonald's or something. But in a lot of professional jobs, they have a bit of leeway, and they'll just agree to it just so this process ends, right? So that's how you do it. You don't just Like there's a lot of people that just price themselves really high when they say, what are your salary expectations? They say, oh, it's $1 million. You know, that doesn't work because they just eliminate you and then they go with the cheaper candidates because they have several options. Was that answer long enough for you, Carlos? Because I mean, I have several hours. I could like really, really expand on it. Moon Knight says, what should I care? What should I take care of before I get to the interview, and how should I start with the interview? What should you take care of before you get to the, I don't know what you mean by that. Rehearse, practice with somebody else if you can. That's the real practice, right? And you don't really have much of a choice a lot of times. They will direct the interview. You can try and turn it into a conversation where it's kind of flowing back and forth, but they basically run the interview. Moon Knight says they have a set budget, so how should I go with the interview and get the upper limit or close? You can't. You can't. They will not disclose that. If they do give you an official range, like they say this job pays between 50 and 80 or something like that, you never know if that's accurate. A lot of times it isn't. And a lot of times it's a matter of they have an official range and then there's an unofficial range, which exists only in the head of the hiring manager. If you report to an actual manager, someone with like actual decision-making power, that has profit and loss responsibility for a business unit of some kind, like a department or something, they can pretty much do whatever they want. So the only real upper limit is you know, 99.9% of the time, they're not going to pay you more than your boss, right? That's the only real hard limit. So they're not going to disclose this. And if they do disclose it officially, you never really know if it's the actual truth. So you don't know that. It's like negotiating with a salesperson to buy a car, you know? How low could they have gone? You will never get an answer to that. What's as low as they'll go? They're not going to disclose that. They're going to guard that information like the crown jewels. Because if you knew that they would go as low as this number, that would obviously be exactly what you're looking for. You would offer a pittance above that number and stick to it, and you know they'd make the sale, right? You know, it gives away their entire advantage. So they are going to protect that information like the crown jewels. Okay, so you can't get that. Unless the people are so stupid they can't even tie their shoes, which, hey, you know, we encounter that sometimes, but I wouldn't count on it. How do you say that? Alala? Alala. Hey, Bill, I find it hard to switch to a support role in different company from my support role. Need to do this for personal reason, lack the technical skills. This is for months now. 60% of the time I get interviewed, and usually all 2 or 3 interviews, and in most cases their response is they found a better candidate. Okay, it keeps going. Let's see here. Or it did. Oh, this jumped on me. The only theory I have is they may be skeptical of why I want to just switch companies for the same role, and they ask a question. Usually respond with your suggestion for the what question? Why are you switching companies? I don't know if I've ever given a direct answer to that one. Well, that's an obvious question. Like if you're making, say, 50,000 in a role, and let's say your title is customer service manager, okay? And you are leaving that job to get another job with the same title, customer service manager, at a different company for the same pay, right? It is a logical question. Why are you doing this? Because it doesn't seem, it's not obvious why that would make sense, right? You see, every time you jump, you change jobs, there's risk. You could accept a job, you quit your old job, you take the new one, only to find the new one is not a job, right? They rescind the offer, or they say, I'm sorry, as of right now, we've just gone bankrupt, you have no more job, right? There's always a risk. So it makes sense that you would want to be compensated for the risk. So you would get a premium. So you leave a $50,000 job to get a $58,000 job or something like that. of your own free will, right? So they're obviously asking, like, what's the deal now? If you are being laid off, or that company is going bankrupt, or there's a lot of uncertainty with that company, they don't know if they're going to eliminate your division, those would be acceptable reasons. I think someone would understand that, right? But at face value, it doesn't seem to make sense. So it's a natural question they're going to ask, right? Now, you could say all kinds of other things. You could say, like, well, having been on the inside of this company and having seen the culture and having seen what their strategic plan is and where it's going, and, you know, it's not really a place I want to go. It's not really a culture I'm really super excited about. However, your company, I know this, and this about it. I know you guys do this, and this. And I know that, or I get the impression that there's more opportunities at your company if someone was to learn or to be promoted, or a greater variety of work, or to train people or to manage people, you know, and for that reason, I'd much rather continue my career here, because you guys seem to have your stuff together. You're doing a lot of things that I'm looking for. You know, so you could say things like this, where you basically flatter them and you show off your knowledge of their company and their operation, and you give a logical reason why I would much prefer working here than over there, right? Not that you badmouth your old employer, but you sing praises of the new one, right? So that's probably along the lines of something they would accept, hopefully. Who did I skip here? Carlos says, how should I respond when asked why I walked away from a good or management level position? Hey, just because it's management doesn't necessarily mean it's good. I can tell you that for nothing. Besides sounding like I am bashing the previous employer. Well, I did a video that responds to that in detail, called the best answer to the question, why did you leave your last job? Okay, so maybe go check that out. It depends on your situation. You would say different things based on what's going on with your last, with your current employer or your last employer. Short answer is just to say, I'm ready to do more. You know, the job I have is perfectly fine, and I don't mind it, and there's no issues with it, but it doesn't seem like it's going to change in the near future. I feel like I've mastered what I do, and I'm looking to do more. I'm still young. I'm still looking to learn and grow my skill set and my experience base. And it just seems like that job is just going to stay more or less static for the next several years. And I'm just looking for more opportunities and more learning experiences. And that's why I'm interested in what you guys are doing over here. You know, something of that nature. So you flatter them and answer the question all at the same time. That's how I would do it. But check out that video on my channel, the best answer to why did you leave your last job? Hopefully that helps. Farkas says, would it be possible to request a salary increase for my 2-month notice period? Considering that I previously missed out on a significant bonus when I transferred here. Same company, changing departments and position. This would only apply for these 2 months, as my salary as the new company would be capped at my current level for the first year. I still don't fully understand the situation here. So you're transferring internally from one role to another, okay? And you said you previously missed out on a bonus when you transferred. Okay, so I'm assuming that that's a valid reason. So yeah, I mean, listen, you don't need any permission to ask for anything. Okay, if you go to your new boss, now listen, if the bonus was going to come to your old position, and you go to your new boss in the new position and say, I need you to compensate me for the bonus I didn't get in my old position, that might be a tough ask, right? Because it's like, why should we pay for something that your old manager should have given you? You know what I mean? You know, that kind of thing. So you might have to have a good answer to that, right? because it's like you're saying, these other people didn't give me this, so you now must give me that. It's like, okay, you'd have to have a good backup to that, right? Now, if you've already agreed, if you already signed on, you can't say, well, it would persuade me to take the role. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say that anymore because you've already taken it. So, I don't know. Now, you can't use sort of a threat. You can't say, like, pay me this or I'll slack off or, I won't feel good about this job. You can't use that, because if you do that, they're not going to be blackmailed. If you do that and you start slowing down and doing a bad job, they'll just let you go. You know what I mean? I really don't recommend anything like that. So I don't know. It depends on the new manager. If you have a new manager that's a bit of a humanist and they like you as a person and they're empathetic and all this, like, maybe you might get somewhere, but there's no harm in asking. You could say it very professionally. You could say, like, listen, here's my situation. This is what happened with my bonus. I did not get it, and I did not get it for this reason because I moved here, so therefore I'm not entitled to it. However, it does feel like it is a bit of a downer for me. It's very unfortunate that it worked out like that because I had to eat that cost. I had to forego that bonus to come here. It just kind of, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done. That's all. I wouldn't go into depth with it. Something like that. That's just my style. Other people might push harder for it, but then you risk jeopardizing your good relationship with your new manager. And it depends how big of a bonus we're talking about here. That might not be something you want to do. So I'll leave that up to you. But hopefully that at least frames the problem a bit better. Catherine says, great content. Thanks for your insights. Well, thank you, Catherine. That's very nice of you. I'm a mom of 3 who's been out of the workforce for years. What's the most graceful way to explain and minimize the damage of a large gap in one's resume? Excellent question, Catherine. Listen, I don't know if there's like an absolute best way of doing it, but this is what I would do, okay? You see, recruiters, by definition, they don't like work gaps. They don't like work gaps for any reason, even a totally legitimate reason. You were starting a family, or you're taking care of a sick family member, or health issues. The problem is that, at least technically, if they've been trained and they have a certificate in HR and all this, usually the way it works is that any work gap, you see, they know that you can justify it, right? But they don't really know if that's the whole truth, right? It could turn out that, your explanation of the work gap, it could turn out that it was just a sort of convenient obfuscation of the real issue, which was that you were fired or you're unemployable because you've got a terrible attitude or you've got some other kind of issue with you. Maybe you're a kleptomaniac. Maybe you're nuts. Maybe you're, a terrible person. Maybe, you've got, there's all kinds of issues. Maybe you're a psychopath. I mean, who knows? They can't tell. They don't know. So they're trained to regard a work gap as a higher risk thing that you would have, right? Excuse me. So this is what you're up against. So the thing is, the situation you described, to me, it really seems like you're in exactly the same situation as somebody changing careers, right? When you change careers, you're coming into it with a disadvantage. And usually, once again, recruiters don't like people who are changing careers because by definition, you have zero experience in the job you're trying to get, right? Because you've never done it before. You're changing careers. So it's very hard to be in those situations, whether it's work gap or career change, and successfully get past a recruiter, okay? So if you're in either of those situations, we all know that those people get hired every day. People change careers all the time, and stay-at-home moms or people that were taking care of a sick family member or something, they rejoin the workforce all the time. The reason they do it a lot of times is because they don't go through a recruiter. They go directly to a hiring manager, and they do it through some form of networking, okay? Now, if you're a stay-at-home mom, I don't know, you're a mother of 3, like maybe there's people on school boards and all this kind of stuff that can, they're connections to professional people that, you go to one or two school events and you're rubbing shoulders with all these administrators and all this, and someone there knows someone who's hiring for something that you could do. Like, that's one way. Another way, the way I would recommend, is reaching out to whatever employer and talking to the hiring manager directly, right? Doing that, saying, I've got some great skills in this area. If ever you're looking for this, let me know. And if they respond, then you go and talk to them directly. You don't go through a recruiter. You don't go through an HR organization. The way most people get hired is they don't go through a recruiter, okay? You don't have to trust me on this. Look it up yourself. So I would not attempt to go through a recruiter. I would not respond to posted jobs with an application that goes through a recruiter and then you're trying to get a job interview with the recruiter. I wouldn't do any of that. I would simply go the networking route, okay? Because when you talk to hiring managers, if you approach them the right way, they will tend to give you a chance. They meet you, which is almost like an interview. It's like they just meet you, you come down, you talk to them, and they're impressed by how easy you are to talk to, how awesome you are. You seem to know your stuff, so they'll give you a chance. A recruiter might look at you and say, oh, that work gap of, if it's longer than, X many years, if you don't use it, you lose it. So all this work experience you had before your work gap, it doesn't count. They might say all kinds of stupid BS like that. And that's what they honestly think, because that's what they're trained to think. But we all know it's crap. You need someone to give you a chance, and a lot of hiring managers will give you a chance if you can get in front of them. So I'd look into that. That's actually a lot easier to do than most people think. And it can really work out because you're showing, you have an advantage in doing this, by the way. And I've said this like 1,000 times on this channel. You have an advantage because 1,000 people could apply for a job, right? But how many people are like getting in front of the hiring manager? Not many. You're probably the only one. And by getting in front of the hiring manager, that's not something that you were told to do. You're not following instructions. This is something that you did of your own initiative. It's like volunteering. It signals that you care, that this is a big deal for you. You're not just responding to job ads like people do. You can apply for 100 jobs in a day. You're not doing that. You're there because you specifically care about this job. They've also met you. So of all the people that are just resumes on a desk, you're the only one they've met. They've seen how easy you are to deal with. They've seen that you're professional in the way that you talk, the way that you dress, the way that you act. They've seen that you obviously know your stuff when it comes to that type of job. They can talk shop with you, and you can talk back, and you can show off your knowledge and stuff. So who would you hire? Would you hire a complete unknown that's a resume? You never even met them. They could be a psychopath. They could be, lying about everything on their resume. Or if you were the hiring manager, would you hire the person that was dedicated enough to show up, meet them, that you already get along with? You already know it's going to be easy to deal with that person. Who would you hire? Right? That's why they'll give you a chance. So hopefully that makes sense. Like, that's a whole thing. That's not like, it's very hard to sort of say everything in like, a couple of minutes, but hopefully that puts you on the right track there, Catherine. But don't stop any particular thing. Like, there's many different ways to get a job. You could try all of them. Like, try this in conjunction with like a traditional job search where you respond to job ads. Maybe that might bear some fruit too. Carlos says, that was a great response, and I feel like I can work with that response and be able to adapt. Okay, good. Will's B3. I don't know why that's funny, but it is. Says, what do you think hiring managers are looking for when the application asks the question, what is an example of a non-computer system you've hacked to your advantage? Social engineering, probably. But the problem is that, hacked is like a negative thing sometimes, right? There's a negative connotation. So if you say like, oh yeah, like I've entered secure buildings before without a pass by tailgating the person in front through the security door, you know? It doesn't close after they go through, you know, because I'm so close to them, I just ride their coattails in through the open door, you know, and I've gotten into apartment blocks that are like, you know, secured. I've gotten into government buildings that are secured. You know, it's like, is that the stuff that you really want to say? You know, I'm not sure. It could be a trick question. It's like saying tell me about a time you were dishonest and it worked out to your advantage. You know, it's like a trap. It's like a trick question. Carlos says, I'll definitely check the video out. That response was like, well, thank you. And hopefully it helps. Moon Knight says, I found various reviews about the company that I'm applying to, that they sometimes don't pay out the employees on time. Should I still consider this company? This is my first professional interview. Yeah, you can still, I mean, listen. You've heard reports. You never know. They could be false, right? But don't take any risks, right? So what you could do is you could entertain this, and let's say they give you an offer. If they pay a lot or it's to your liking or to your advantage, just take it. And then don't quit your day job until you've started that with that company, you know, just to be on the safe side or something. I don't know, you know, or take a leave of absence or something at your existing job if you can, to start working there. You know, I mean, hey, you know, it depends on the details, right? Hearing a report about something, depending on the source, depending on how reliable it is, it could be noise, it could be false, right? So, but at the same time, you don't want to do anything risky. You don't want to quit your job that you have in your hand, you know, to take an offer that turns out to be a scam or something, you know, or you start working and they never pay you, so you eventually quit after 2 months. You know what I mean? Just do what's right for you. Don't take any unnecessary risks. But if you can try and investigate the opportunity at the same time, you know, that may be something you want to do, depending on the details. This is my first professional interview. Okay, I see. Well, listen. The thing about job interviews is that practice makes perfect. Okay, now, if you have an opportunity to do an interview or to do a follow-up interview, even if you might not want to take the job, just do it. The more experience you get with interviews in general, the better you will be. Okay, so at the very least, you could use it for that, right? You know, but just remember, you know, you are in charge of yourself. They can't bully you or pressure you into anything you don't want to do. So if you don't want to disclose certain information, then don't disclose it. Say, nope, I'm sorry, I don't disclose that. If they're trying to get you to do something that seems kind of a bit fishy or a bit strange, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, okay? Especially if people are saying bad stuff about this company online or something, you know, depending on the details of that. You know, you can still go down to the interview. You know what I'm saying? Like, experience is good, right? And if this is your first interview, get some experience. Just protect yourself. Don't disclose anything. Don't accept anything, you know, that you don't want to do. What does that say? That's Gabriel. But you got something in front of your name now. It looks like donut, but it has an I or an L. Says, hope you're having a good day. I'm having a great day so far, Gabriel, apart from the fact that I'm sick. So my medication is holding, so I'm here and in the now. Thank you for being here. Moon Knight says those reviews were from ex-employees. Okay, well, still, you never know. Okay, so listen, you know, most ex-employees don't think very highly of the company. It's usually when you talk to an ex-employee about the company they left, they're usually not going to sing praises. Sometimes you get that. You say, you know, I put in many years of service. They did a fantastic job. They employed me. It was a great place to work. But usually they're going to have some beef with the company. They're going to say, they did this though. What I didn't like was when they did that, or they had this policy of doing, so it's typical, right? Some of it's noise. Some of it can be very, very valid indeed, and you should listen to it, but some of it can be noise. You don't know. So you proceed with caution. Farkas, you're welcome, Farkas. That's very nice of you. Gabriel says, this is my other account. Oh, okay, well, that would explain it then. A man of two accounts. One for the day and one for the night, if you know what I'm saying. That's good. Yeah, get in the chat. There are 38 people here. 38 of you that feel that listening to my endless rambling about stuff that I never planned to talk about is a good use of your time. So thank you for that. I hope you're getting something out of this. If you have a question or you're wondering something, get into the chat. Ask me, stuff. And I've already talked about the things I was going to talk about today, so it's just purely a Q&A right now. So that's what we're going to do. Chris says, I'd mostly request to ask my questions first. They'd mostly say yes. As far as answering their questions, I had a knack for answering without ever really answering. My word salad was on point. Okay, well, good for you. I wonder how that works. You go into the interview, they say, thank you for coming down. It's great to meet you. Here, have a seat, right? And then they say, okay, excellent. Well, and then you say, I'm just going to stop you right there. The way we're going to do this, okay, is I ask you questions, okay, you answer them, and then if there's time, you can maybe ask me a couple of questions, and I'll answer if I feel like it, right? And they're just so impressed with your commanding presence that they hire you on the spot. That would be fantastic. But then you give word salad, apparently, so I'm not sure how that would work. And I've heard word salad, like legitimate word salad, and it's a little scary, and it's more random than you could ever imagine, I could not write actual word salad. My mind makes connections between things. There's actually a logical kind of thing there. It's completely random. So it's pretty impressive if you could do that. Moon Knight says, thanks for such detailed and dedicated answers. Well, you're welcome, Moon Knight. Gabriel says, what is a reasonable amount of money to ask for per year in terms of raise percentage? There's no such thing, as far as I'm concerned. You can ask for whatever the hell you damn well please. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. It doesn't have to be reasonable. But if it's what you feel you want, this is the welcome to the real world. You can ask anything you want of anyone, They have the equal right to say no, absolutely not, no dice, A lot of times you might ask for something reasonable and still get like a offended no, as a response, right? Now, I also don't believe in asking for raises because managers usually don't just give them out, right? I did a video on that, I think, recently about raises, about asking for raises. The problem with asking for a raise is that you have demonstrated your value by the virtue of the fact that you've stayed there for a while working for a certain amount. So if they're paying you, say, $50,000 right now, and you've stayed there for a couple of years, you've just demonstrated that your value is $50,000, right? Now you're coming back to the boss and saying well, okay, I got a deal for you. I got a proposal. How about this? I stay and do the same job that I've been doing for the last couple of years, but get this, you pay me more, right? And does that sound like a good deal to the manager? No, obviously not. The other problem with it is that you see, 90% of people on the planet feel that they are underpaid. Okay, they feel like they deserve more money. I don't care if you're a CEO. I don't care if you're, you're making like literally 25 cents a day, in some country, some developing country around the world, everybody, not 90% of everybody feels they are underpaid. Okay? Even people that are paid like handsomely, they feel they're underpaid. Okay? It's universal. It's relative. So what that means is that most people feel they should get a raise. So a lot of the more extroverted or the braver ones go and talk to their manager and say, I feel I deserve a raise. And they'll give some trumped up reason that has a certain logic to it. But as we know, something that has a certain logic to it is not necessarily correct. And it doesn't really matter, because the bottom line is they just feel they deserve more. And so they'll use any kind of clever argument to try and back that up. Now, the manager knows that if the employee threatens to quit over it, that also, I don't know what the percentage is, but like, it would not surprise me to learn it's about 80 or 90%. It's a bluff. People say, I need this raise, and if I don't get this raise, I don't know if it makes sense for me to stay here. And the manager says like, I see your point. That's a very good point. No. And what happens is the employee stays. The manager calls their bluff and they stay. So therefore, you put all this together, the default action of a manager when an employee comes to them and says, I feel I deserve more money, the manager's default response will be no. And, whether that's a average employee, a below average employee, or an above average employee, they're an overperformer, they'll still say no. And then if the employee is a overperforming employee and they do decide to quit over it, the manager will let them quit, like to call their bluff. Are you actually going to quit? Let's see. Giving your notice is not the same thing as quitting, right? You work out your notice and then you actually leave and you don't look back. Then the manager calls you that next day, your first day of unemployment, at home and says, come on back. You got your money. Right? If you make a bluff, it has to be called. And if you're not threatening anything, why would they pay you more money? The other thing is that if you pay one employee more money because they ask for it, that kind of sets a precedent too. Now anyone else that, like, why are they making more money whereas their coworkers aren't, right? It creates that kind of situation. That can be a bad situation to be in if the word gets out of what's going on, right? So the person that doesn't speak up doesn't get paid more, but the people that do get paid more, that's not fair. Maybe the people that didn't speak up are the ones that knew that that's not a really appropriate professional conversation that makes you feel like a member of a team, right? And their big reward is they get paid less than their coworkers who acted less professionally. So I mean, there's a lot of sides to this. So that's why, in my opinion, and based on my experience, asking for raises doesn't really work unless you have an option. Unless you say, look, I've got an offer from another company. They're paying me 60, right? So can you match it, right? That carries more weight. And it's better for you because whichever way this goes, you end up making 60 or more. You know what I mean? That's the way to do it. But people don't like hearing that because that actually involves work. So that's the trade-off, right? So, so for what it's worth, I'm sorry if this sounds a bit harsh, but like that's kind of my attitude towards this. Just asking for more money when you've proven that you're worth this much, because by virtue of the fact you've stayed there and accepted it, it doesn't have a lot of bite, unfortunately. No harm in trying, and you can ask for whatever you want to whoever you want. But don't be surprised if that's kind of what you are met with. Maybe you have like a really compassionate, humanist type of manager that is very empathetic and they care about you and they agree, and you are an overperformer, in which case maybe they will, sometimes it works. No harm in trying. But that's what I have to say. Who asked that? I think, was that Gabriel? I think that was Gabriel, was it? Yeah, what is the reasonable amount of money to ask for in terms of raise? Yeah. Sometimes there's a cost of living increase, but Sometimes not. A lot of times not, because it's unpredictable. And it also, of course, depends on what level you're at. It's completely different ways of doing it for, like, are you an entry level? Are you a professional? Are you a manager? Are you an executive? It really depends. Moon Knight says, well, that's a new perspective. Thanks. Okay. Hopefully that's good. Good night then. Talking from the other part of the hemisphere. Going to watch the full live tomorrow. Okay. Well, have a good sleep, Moon Knight. You got to rest your brain and be sharp for the next day. You're welcome. Could you please share a bit about your journey? Oh, well, my journey is like 5 decades, so we'd be here till the cows come home. But it's flattering that you'd care about that. Gray says, thanks for the videos. How do I go from a GRC to a C-suite? What's GRC? Don't use acronyms. I mean, I don't know where in the world you are. I don't know what industry you're in. I don't know what level you're at. So, I mean, don't use acronyms with people. Spell it out. I mean, I obviously know what the C-suite is, but like, what are we talking about here? Are you an accountant? Are you a salesperson? Are you in operations? Like, what industry? It's going to vary. Chris says, of course, I didn't get every job, but it created an interesting dynamic. I once asked the interviewer, are you the type that has to be chased for email responses, or do you respond quickly? You see, generally speaking, it's not good to ask questions like that because people don't like it. Like, it's like basically like saying, oh, so you're the hiring manager. Okay, are you going to be like a real jackass if I get the job, or are you kind of tolerable? Which is it? People don't like being asked stuff like that because it's kind of a hostile question. Are you the type that has to be chased? Because let me tell you, I've met a few of those kind of rat bastards, and I got no time for them, to be honest. It's just a hostile kind of thing. Listen, you can't it's very hard to successfully put the screws to them in a job interview. Okay? Like, you're not in a position of power. You're asking for a job, right? They can hire someone. They're talking to many people, right? Many people want the job. And if you start making demands or making them feel awkward or anything like that, usually the response is, well, I'm sorry, we're not moving forward with your application. Like, usually it's just that simple. They're going to hire the person that they get a good vibe from. And if this is the first time they're meeting you and you're already putting the screws to them and making them feel awkward or making them kind of have to defend themselves, it's like, what are you going to be like as an employee? You're going to be like that, but times 100, right? And it's also, in addition to making them feel awkward, if you have a bunch of wants, wills, and needs, that also signals a negative thing about you. What they're looking for is somebody easygoing that can just go with the flow. And, if you respond to emails this way, hey, it's fine. If you respond to emails that way, I can swing with it. I can work with that. That's what they're looking for, right? What if you get hired by that person and immediately a month later they leave and your boss gets replaced with a new jackass that doesn't handle email to your liking? You know what I mean? Does that mean you're going to have a problem with them now? Why would they want to hire someone like that has like all these specific things that have to be just right for them, right? So I'm saying like that's why generally it's not a good idea to go in there and play hardball if you're asking for something. The only time you can play hardball is if you have something to bargain with, and here you don't. The moment that you turn them off, they just eliminate you, and then they go with another candidate that they're already speaking to. So it's not the right time. You might be able to get away with this if it's in the offer stage, or even if you've accepted the offer and you haven't yet started because you haven't given notice to your existing employer. So you could back out at any time. It's like, then you might be able to have some leverage there and ask some tough questions. But it's just not a great strategy, Chris, in general. Everything happens some of the time, so it might work sometimes, but in general, it's not the type of thing we want to do. You say something else here. I was asked back for a second interview that particular time. but I will say we had a good rapport. He smiled and said, usually chased. Okay, we left. I declined. Okay, well, fine. Well, whatever. I mean, hey, look, each to their own. Usually, it depends on your situation. I sense by what you just said there that you're not very desperate for a job. There are some people out there who are desperate, and you're really showing your ego when you say stuff like that. Like, oh, we did the thing, and I'm too good for them. I declined their interview. Hey, if you're just that good and everyone's tripping over you to offer you a job, great. But you might want to reconsider that. You might want to reconsider that going forward and entertain offers or opportunities just to see where they go. What you could do is you could take their interview and you could say, okay, what I'm going to keep in the back of my mind is that I'm going to ask for like a lot more money. I'm going to see if I get to the end of this process. And if I do, what you might do is like either accept it outright or ask for like, a couple grand more. Well, I'm going to ask for 10 grand more, right? If I got to deal with that, right? I don't like that. I'm going to ask for 10 grand more and then I'll feel better about this. Something like that. You also get more experience negotiating with people. You also get more experience with job interviews in that type of situation, which makes you better at it. So you could have benefited from some of this. So just something to think about. I wasn't there. I don't know what these people are like, so I can't really judge you, but I'm just saying as a general thing, you really want to think twice about like throwing away opportunities, because of ego or because of some reason that might not be great, if that's what it was. Gabriel says, thank you for a clear and concise answer. I suppose being cynical is the best course of action. What was the cynical thing? Oh, reasonable amount of money to ask for. Listen, it's not cynical. It's practical. Okay, that's what I would say. From my perspective, that's why I said that. Why? Because I've been on both sides of it. I've asked for raises and been given like all kinds of negative responses. Like I've had people like snap like a twig in anger at stuff like that. I've also been a manager that's had people come to me and said, I'd like a raise or I want a raise. It's not more of a request, it's more of a demand. I've had all kinds. And I've also had the privilege of observing people that are older than me, that were older than me, and I don't know if they're still around, how they handled it. And not understanding fully where they were coming from, but understanding it years later when I was in the same position. So that's where I'm coming from. Now, your experience may vary, and that's fine. And I mean that. We're probably in different parts of the world, different industries, so it could go differently. But I'm just justifying where my answer came from. It's not being a cynic, it's being a realist. Where money is concerned, people tend to be, it tends to be, what's the word? I don't want to say cynical, but I want to say people are out for themselves, and they tend to lie, and they tend to misrepresent when there's money on the line. They'll manufacture being all offended that, they're not being paid more or something. They'll make all kinds of threats that, are just totally empty. They have no intention of following through with any of them, just to see if it, persuades you to do what they want, and that you'll back down because you might fear a conflict or you might fear awkwardness or, you know what I mean? And the other thing is you probably don't see the pressures that the manager is under. The manager usually is given a budget and they're asked to do more with the budget, not ask for more budget and produce the same results, which is what like a raise is. You know what I mean? So you don't see what's going on with the manager exactly. They are compensated or judged on things like their budget versus their results, and they can even be fired over that stuff. So I mean, you're asking them to take money out of the pocket and give it to you. You're asking them can you score lower on how good you're doing in your job. For me, that's sometimes what might be happening in a way. So they might not be super eager to entertain it. And the other part of it is that like every manager wants to pay their employees a lot. They do. Like, imagine if you were a manager and you paid each of your direct reports $1 million a year, right? Would you have problems with your employees? Would they be insubordinate? Would they slack off? Would they goof around and not do their work, necessitating you coming in and having to take charge? Probably not. They would probably be model employees. They wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize that deal they got going, right? If they're being paid $1 million, they'd be super enthusiastic. They'd do their job really well. You want to pay them more. The problem is you can't. That's the situation for most managers. Not all, but most. Now, there's always exceptions. There's some weird people out there that got their own thing going, but that's usually the situation. So, hey, if you can come in and work with that, maybe there's a win-win opportunity there somehow. I don't know. You could like take on some new responsibilities or whatever. You make them a deal. Hey, you give me this and, I'll do this for you or something. Maybe there's opportunity there. Gray says, information technology governance risk compliance. Governance risk compliance. Okay, that's great. It's interesting how you think I would have known that. Thanks for your videos. How do I go from information technology government risk compliance to C-suite? I have no idea. So are you working for the government? Like what country are you in? Is this the US? Like you're in IT. Is this like a financial thing if you're doing like risk management, or is this a legal thing? You're looking for policy compliance. Are you an inspector? Are you an administrator? Are you, sorry, I'm not in that industry, so you'd have to explain. I don't think I could really give you an answer on that. I don't know what your situation is, and I don't know the culture of the organization, Like, are you talking in general, or are you talking about getting a C-suite position in your existing organization? That would be very hard for me to say. I wouldn't be able to tell you that. If you're talking about in general, here's what I would say, okay? Hopefully you're on LinkedIn, okay? This is my sort of default thing for anyone that aspires to be in a certain position and doesn't know what they need to get in that position. That's kind of the first step. So here's what I'd say. Go online, go on LinkedIn, and do a people search in your hometown or in the region where you would like to have this job, okay? And do a search for that position, okay? So instead of saying C-suite, you got to be more specific, because I don't know what the path is for someone in your position. Like which C-suite? Are you talking about being the chief governance complier or the general counsel, or you know what I mean? Like I don't know what would be the tract for whatever this role is, governance risk compliance person. But do a search for that position. Okay, if it's general counsel or it's chief compliance officer or whatever, chief legal officer. Or, I don't know, CIO, like if you're in IT, I'm not sure. And look at, it's a people search. So you're going to have individuals show up as the results. Presumably they are either in that position now, or they have been in that position in the past. So go look at their profile and see what they have. Now, if every single one of those people has, say, an MBA, then you probably need an MBA to qualify. If they have 25 years experience in a certain role, well, you should probably try to be in that role, or if you're in the role and you've only been there 2 years, maybe you might not be eligible, until you have a bit more experience. You know what I mean? So see what they have. You can see basically their resume, and if they're in the role. And if you don't look at like one or two of these people, look at like 50 of them. and start to notice patterns. They all have this and they all have that, right? Or if you look at their career track, it all followed a very similar path, right? So that can tell you, okay, people usually get into that role by doing this. They get this, they have this experience, they have this education, they have this training, they spend time here, they spend time here, they spend time here, and then the next step seems to be that role that you want, right? So knowing that would probably be useful to you, right? So do that, and then once you know like what makes you sort of a candidate, then it's a matter of figuring out like what do you have to actually do to get in the role, and that will probably be some kind of networking thing. If it's a C-suite, they'd have to know you as a person. They'd have to be personally recommended by somebody for them to take you seriously. All that kind of stuff. That's when you get into that stuff. So it's kind of like a 2-step process. Hopefully that makes sense. Oh God, my eyes are getting bug-eyed here looking at this. Thank you for being here, by the way. I see there's 50 people here. You guys are awesome. If you're looking to get hired and you don't know what to do, you're kind of confused, perplexed, one option is I've got this course. Okay, check out that course. There's a link in the description. Very popular course. A lot of people have gotten it. So that's where all my advice is on how to get hired. It covers not just traditional method of getting a job where you respond to a job posting with an application, which goes to a recruiter, but it also talks about networking, how to do networking if you're an introvert, how to do it on social media to really open up a lot of doors. And I take you all through that stuff. So if you're interested in learning that, check out that course. We're talking about C-suites. We're talking about people higher up. If you are interested in that kind of stuff, I do have another course right here called Write Like a Professional. And that's where I share my knowledge of the communication skills that you have to tack on to qualify for being in executive roles. So that's where I put all that stuff. That's my most recent course. So there's a lot of good stuff there. Once again, link in the description. Check that out. Okay, so I jumped around answering questions. So where did I leave off here? Okay, Chris, I think I answered that. Or the typist Chase? Yes. Gabriel, yeah. Gray. Okay, there we go. Chris, I was asked back for a second interview, but I'll say, okay, yeah, we talked about that. Okay, well, that's the end of the chat. Hey, get in the chat. There's 46 people here. If you are wondering about something or struggling with something, your moment of glory has finally arrived. Get in the chat, ask me the question. I'll do my best to help you out. The perfect network engineer is back. Hello, sir. Good morning. How are you doing? You are honest every time you speak. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I try to be. Don't always succeed. Listen, we all have a game face and we all are guarded about certain things. Everyone. Me and everyone else you see speaking publicly, it's the same. But I try to do my best. What field of background do you come from? I've talked about that before. I started off with a degree in electrical engineering, and the standard career path for like getting a degree in engineering would be to work as an engineer. And I didn't do that because I found that when I graduated university and you're looking around for your first career job, I found that a lot of other people were hiring people with engineering degrees, not to be engineers. Like engineers design things, right? They design bridges and, computers and, stuff like that. So that's the standard career path for an engineer. Like, for example, if you get a law degree, you assume that you're going to be a lawyer, right? Like that's kind of an assumption that people make. But what happens if you finally get your law degree and then you realize that, there's an oil company or something that wants to hire you because you have a law degree, but not to work as a lawyer, to work as someone who proofreads their contracts or something. You know, like it's some job that you never even considered before, but they're looking for someone. They say you have to have a law degree to do this. So you think, okay, and then you look at how much they're paying, and you go, oh, okay, well, I just assumed I'd be a lawyer, but you know, this looks pretty good, right? So that's what happened to me. I got sort of sucked off of like the standard career trajectory, and I went into the railroad of all places, and I ended up supervising gangs of industrial electricians and mechanics, laborers, this kind of thing, and I worked in a giant garage where you repair locomotives, and it was shift work. So I was like, you know, in my early 20s or mid 20s, and I started off on the midnight shift. This is where I can see the amount of people like leaving the chat, right, as I talk about myself. And so I stayed in the railroad for 8 years. I kind of moved up, and then I moved sideways. I moved across 5 different industries. So, you know, I had my own company that was a software company, like back in the day, like completely irrelevant to IT now. This is before like web services and stuff were even like around. So yeah. And then I worked in industrial kind of stuff, and I did some teaching, and now I'm a YouTuber. So, you know, I mean, I'm actually a management consultant, but like I do this, I've been doing this more and more the last couple of years because I like it, and I can do it from home. So, you know, so a little bit of everything, but I've moved around, and I've seen how different, how the same things are done differently in different industries. And there's an incredible amount of opportunity out there for people that are moving around, because, you know, like what I saw companies that are just struggling with like some problem that they really don't know how to solve. And all the people in that industry don't know how to solve it because they've never seen it solved. And it's a big problem for them, and they spend all their effort and time on it. Meanwhile, that problem has been solved completely 30 years ago in a totally different industry. They solved it mathematically. Like it's completely solved. It's not even an issue they think about, you know? So if you've worked in that industry and you've seen that, and then you come to this industry here where they're struggling with this thing, and, you know, all you do is you take the solution that you saw over there and you apply it to here, you know, and everyone thinks you're a genius, you know? So I did that a couple of times, and that was one of the advantages of like jump. thank you for someone saying mic out. My God. You know, this connection has not been very good for a very long time, and I'm surprised that it's always held up. Well, I guess you guys missed that explanation. What was the last thing you guys heard? If people are still interested. I don't think I even touched it. It just spontaneously went out. Now, as a technology type person, that bugs me because, you know, one thing that you would get when people would complain something didn't work is, you know, they'd say, it just stopped. It just stopped working. And if you're a technician or something, you say, well, things don't just stop on their own. Usually it's because someone made a change. That's what screwed it up, right? So you bumped it, or you touched it, or you upgraded it or something. That's usually when things go wrong. So you can trace back the cause of the problem based on what someone did last, right? Anyway, yeah, so I could repeat my answer, but I'm wondering if someone can tell me what's the last thing you guys heard me say before my mic went out. If you could tell me that, I'll be happy to repeat. You were talking about using a solution of one. Oh, God, that's going back quite a bit. Okay. Listen, I was talking about a panel interview. Someone had asked about a panel interview. I was talking about business cards. The bottom line is a panel interview is the same in every respect as talking to a single person. Same questions, same dynamic, everything. The only challenge is, you know, that you're talking to three people. First of all, you can easily forget their names, and what's even more important is that you can not know who they are. So if someone's a hiring manager, or someone's an accountant, or someone's the lead salesperson, you might want to tailor your answers to those different people, right? So all I was saying was, what I found is that what I recommend for people is to have your own business card. Okay? Now, if you have a LinkedIn profile, this is a lot simpler than you think it is. You know the header of your LinkedIn profile, right? Where it says your name, your tagline. It'll have hopefully a professional headshot, like just head and shoulders of you, and your contact information, right? Just put that on the card. And you can do this for like literally $20. And the place I've always used traditionally for this, for what it's worth, is a place called Vistaprint. So you could try that, or you could go, I'm sure, many other places, and just get a little business card. And then if you walk into the job interview and it's a panel interview, okay, or even if it isn't, you know, when you shake hands with everyone, right? You know, hello, you know, thanks for coming down. I have a chest pocket, a breast pocket. You reach in, you take out your card, and that's a cue for everyone else to do the same. And so you're exchanging business cards. So you've got these three people that are going to interview you. You've got their business cards. So you put them on the table in front of you, corresponding to the person, right? And it says their name and it says what they do. Like it'll say recruiter, or it'll say chief, you know, accounting officer, or something like chief financial officer, or it'll say, you know, like the hiring manager, you know, they're the manager of whatever department. So you go, oh, okay, so I know your names and I know what you do. I know you're the recruiter, you're the hiring manager, and you're like the chief financial officer. Okay, interesting. So I'm going to tailor my answers possibly depending on who I'm speaking to or who asked the question. So it's important to know who these people are, and that's the only real difference in a panel interview. You know, so that's what I recommend, is going through that process. That's why having a business card is handy. And for the amount of money it costs, and it really doesn't cost that much. It's very, very cheap. So I think everyone should do this. Okay, so that's the panel interview question down, like 20 minutes later. Okay, Gray says, thank you. Coming from IT, auditing, and cybersecurity risk management, maybe a better question would have been, how to be viewed as a business leader and not just as a technical expert. Okay, here's the deal. First of all, are you a business leader? Like, you want to be viewed as a business leader. Are you a business leader? Do you know about business? Probably learning a bit about business might help. Yes, I have a course, that MBA course, which you should check out. So knowing a bit about business helps, knowing the lingo, because just like in IT, you have very specific language for very specific concepts that you're referring to, right? And so you can talk shop with other IT people. Can you talk shop with other business people? If you want to talk financial performance of something, if you want to measure a project in, its financial performance or its impact or its risk, can you do that? So knowing a bit about business helps. So if you don't have that, get that. Then the other thing that kind of business people do as a general rule is they network. Okay. So it's a little bit different if you're like an introverted technical person where you probably don't network that much. For you, I'm just playing the odds here. I'm just guessing. Interactions have a very specific purpose. They will have a very specific payoff. And if you don't have that specific payoff, you would consider that interaction pointless, right? It works a little bit different when you get up into sort of the higher levels and be a business leader. And that is that you need to network more because your power becomes how connected you are. So, I learned this years ago before I was really an executive manager working as a project leader, where you had like a figurative Rolodex of like any kind of person that could do anything for you. You wanted a sign put outside, you know who to call to get that done. You have a question about insurance claims, you know exactly who to call. You have your insurance person that you talk to every couple of weeks. Any kind of insurance question, it goes to them. They know how to deal with everything. It's taken care of. Bam. You understand, like, okay, we've just had an inspector inspect our facility and they found a certain amount of whatever element or mineral or whatever you call it in the drain water coming out of a facility. What can we do to improve that process to better filter that water? I know exactly who to call. I know who's an expert on all the different emissions. They'll know exactly what piece of equipment is putting out, say, boron or, something like that, right? And they have an answer to that. Your power becomes how connected you are, right? Because then you can get an answer for anything instantly, like at any moment, right? There's nothing they can throw at you where you'd say, I don't know how to do that. So that also is part of it. So you have to start doing some of that. And you can start doing that by first, if you're not doing this already, go and initiate all kinds of casual conversations with all the executives and other business leaders around you at the same organization. Go have lunch with them. Go have your breaks with them. This kind of thing. And then get them to introduce you to other people that they have contacts with. And that way you're connected to more people that have all kinds of capabilities, right? So it's going to be a different type of communication than what you're used to, I'm guessing. Okay? You're going to be talking to people for the sake of talking to people. It's a little bit of a different thing than a typical technical introvert where you have communication is based on, I have a request and I want to get an answer, and anything other than getting a clear answer to a request or making, a statement or something like that is regarded as useless. So you're going to have to do some of that. Okay, where were we here? I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at that segment of where I'm like talking to dead air just to see how funny it is and pathetic. Well, that's, would you believe in like 5 years, I don't think that's ever actually happened to me, even though I'm using like the cheapest possible cable here to do that. Okay. ongoing Pigeon 6. Nice. How do you locate careers that use your current skills in an adjacent industry? Going back to what you said about seeing problems in one industry that have already been solved in another. I haven't done it like that. With me, it's just been serendipity. You just happen to notice things. Like I've said this before, but one big example for me was in the locomotive maintenance industry. They were looking for what's the best way to allocate your resources, meaning usually people, to repair a shop full of locomotives. How do you assign your people? How do you process the locomotives through the shop in the most efficient way possible? And they were struggling with this. They did no solution to it. Meanwhile, the way you, in computer engineering, the way you design CPUs is, you have the pipeline of instructions, right? And, the pipeline has many, many steps. It's almost like an assembly line, right? For cars, they process down the assembly line and the whole line moves in step like that. So the thing is, you can have a longer pipeline, which means that each step you have to do less work at each step. So therefore, the pipeline moves quicker, but the amount of work in progress also increases because you have the pipeline is very long. Alternatively, you can shorten the pipeline where you have hardly any work in progress, maybe 4 steps, but the pipeline will move very slowly because at each step you got to do a considerable amount of work. So this had been solved mathematically in CPU design. They had all the formulas for how to calculate this. So what I did is I brought that and applied it in the setting of a locomotive repair shop regarding locomotives as the work in progress, and the pipeline is your maintenance operations that you do to them as they flow through the shop, and you get the most efficient trade-off between those two. And you can calculate how many steps you should have for a certain amount of resources and all these different constraints and all this kind of stuff. So you just implement that solution, and all of a sudden your output of your shop is greater, and you have less work in the shop, and all these locomotives are out on the road earning money instead. So it was like an example of how something from CPU design can work in a big garage for locomotives. Totally different industries. You usually don't get people that have worked in both, right? So that's one advantage of having people with a broad skill set. You can see something over here and you're like, hey, that's the solution for this thing that you guys are trying to figure out here, right? It also doesn't help that people in the railroad didn't respect anybody that had education. They didn't know what engineering was, I don't think. They thought I was an electrician, I think, for half of the time I was there. I think that was part of their problem. Roxanne says, thanks for the advice. I'll get some business cards and hand them out to my next interview. Yeah, try it. Most people, at least in my part of the world, most people still have paper business cards, and the great thing is that you know exactly who you've spoken to, and you got their contact information if you want to reach them again, so that's incredibly handy. So every type of business interaction you would have, I have, or as a job seeker, you're talking to people, you don't know if this person could maybe help you. Now, you've met them, so that's maybe something you could use, right? They know who you are. If they enjoyed meeting you and they got along well with you, that you could turn that into something, right? For example, if they've got a position open and they need to hire someone, and they've got a stack of resumes that they have to go through, but you might be qualified for it, and they've met you and they like you. Maybe you can sort of get in there and they'll bring you in first before they even look at that pile of resumes, just to see if you've got what it takes for that role, and if you do, they might be biased towards hiring you because they've already gotten a taste of what you're like as a person and, your communication style and how friendly you are when there isn't a job being discussed. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of opportunities. So that's the advantage of the business card. And the other great thing about having a business card is that after you finish talking to anyone, even in a job interview, you met the hiring manager or you met the CFO or something, whatever we were talking about earlier, depending on the details, any kind of networking meeting or anything like that, you can always say, hey, if I ever have any questions about this, is it okay if I give you a call? And 99% of the chance people are going to say, sure. You have their card. So you've just got permission to call up a chief financial officer with a legitimate question whenever you feel like it. I mean, then you don't abuse it, but you know what I mean? So there's all kinds of advantages to having the little business card with you. It can open a few doors. Ari says, you are pure gold. Well, thank you, Ari. That's very kind of you. I'm glad you're getting some value out of this. Amazed is back. Amazed, my buddy says, no worries, technical issues do happen. Glad things are working fine now. Yeah, it's just further evidence of how homespun my YouTube channel actually is. I've said it several times. This computer I'm using to live stream with you guys, I built it myself 13 years ago, 14 years ago, something like that. It hasn't been upgraded since. So it was originally running Windows 7. I don't think I can use it much longer. Isn't like Windows 10 reaching its end of life this year? And I don't think I can upgrade to Windows 11 because this is so old. So I'll have to make some changes. Oh, I got the knuckle. What do you call it? Like the knuckle bump? That's what I'm hoping it is. It looks like the brass knuckles, right? They have to issue you with your executive manager brass knuckles, right? They come in a fine oak case, and you just keep that on your person, just for every eventuality, Anime Sucks says, with your help, I got myself a job with nearly 135% of my previous pay. Thank you. Well, congratulations, Anime Sucks. That's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm glad that you're prospering there. What should I do next now that I seem to be increasing my potential and sitting position? Since this is like my first pay increase in half a decade. Okay. I'm not sure what you should do. I would need to know some details about it, but just do your best. It's just that simple. Focus on your communication skills. Come across professional at all times. If there's a problem or there's a problem with somebody or something, usually like 99% of the time, the way to solve it, is to go and talk to them and just be open and friendly and say, listen, I think there's a problem, and what can we do? Is there some way we could maybe get through this? Is there some way I can help? Something like that. It's better to do that than just to ignore it or to be hostile to people. Beyond that, just try and do your best. But that sounds good. Congratulations, Anime Sucks. Sheena says, thanks for doing these streams. You're welcome, Sheena. And thank you for saying so. Roxanne says, business cards are a great way to get a job. I'm going to need to network now because I'm seeking to get another job in the finance industry. Excuse me. I'm going from the tech consulting industry to the finance industry after I get my MBA. Okay. MBA is good. To be a proper manager, I would say you would need an MBA plus you need the experience. There's so much soft skills, first of all, but there's so much things you learn through experience, like how this stuff is applied, So, yeah. Sucks says, thanks. Well, good. There you go. Now, listen, I actually have another live stream that's supposed to start in just over 10 minutes. So I'm going to wind this one down, and I hope you guys will stick around if you're interested. In another 10 minutes or so, I'll be back on the air with an edition of Honest HR Nitrous. So stick around for that. That's where we talk about more, it's kind of like this, just we talk about more of the reality of how stuff goes rather than the theory. So thank you to everybody who participated today. I got a lot of people here today, a lot of great questions being asked. I wish you all the luck in the world. I do a lot of these, so I'm beyond today. I'm going to be back on Friday, so come back, and if you have questions along the way, come and get some answers, and we'll talk it out. Other than that, check out my courses. Like I said before, if you're just confused, if you're doing a job search and it's not going anywhere, check that out. Link in the description. If you are trying to climb the ladder, you're trying to get a raise, or not a raise, but a promotion, or you're trying to move into a higher position at a different company, something like that, check that out. That's all the communication skills, basically to be an executive, sort of like what you would learn. And if you are interested in learning business, like Roxanne, who's got an MBA or getting her MBA, check out that. That is a course called My $100 MBA. I myself have an MBA, and what I found was that brick and mortar schools charge you like so much money. It's ridiculous just to learn stuff that's essentially been in the public domain for hundreds of years. It's like learning mathematics. Like most of it has been in the public domain for a very long time. Do you really need to pay like $20,000-$30,000 to get? No, you don't. The information is there. And in fact, all the textbooks that they use in places like Harvard in their MBA program, they're all available. You can get them on Amazon, So check out that course if you're interested. You learn everything you would normally learn in a brick and mortar MBA program, which is a lot. And what this is you get a reading list. You can order the books off Amazon for very cheap. And I guide you through it with videos. So you're not learning the information from me. You're reading it in textbooks that they are highly regarded around the world in universities. And I'm giving you my take on it. So there you go. So if that's interesting to you, check out that. There's a link in the description for that. Also, as I keep bumping my microphone, I could come in for a closer, more intimate kind of thing and do this. Anyway, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you for being here. I wish you all the luck in the world. Take care. See you soon.